Their mandate is to protect civilians in the unstable nation. Instead, UN troops are being investigated for sexual crimes, including forced bestiality. Most of the victims are thought to be young girls. Their families say UN soldiers acted with impunity and their crimes stigmatized their daughters who have been shunned by their communities. The UN admits the system has failed.
The system still has to improve a lot because those soldiers who have been accused of rape and sexual abuse, almost none of them have been held accountable. And if you're a soldier now, even if the prevention steps are good, if you're a soldier, you believe that there is impunity.
The new allegations date back to 2013 and include accounts from this week. Troops from France, Burundi, and Gabon are being investigated. Advocacy groups have lambasted the UN over its handling of past abuse claims and say all investigations must be independent.
Most important, the United Nations simply cannot monitor and police itself and investigate these crimes that are committed by its own personnel. It's just not working. It's a terrible conflict of interest. So the member states of the United Nations must move in and take the organization almost into receivership.
The UN has vowed that there would be justice for the victims in the Central African Republic, but it has no power to prosecute the guilty. That can only be done by the country of the soldier.
Over 100 children accuse UN peacekeepers of rape. Not a single soldier charged. It was recently reported that UN peacekeepers will not be charged for sex crimes against children that they allegedly violated while they were stationed in the Central African Republic. The French government investigated the French soldiers who were accused of the attacks, but they found no evidence of wrongdoing, as often happens when organizations investigate their own. French prosecutors claim that they had insufficient evidence to charge the soldiers, but over 100 children have leveled accusations against them. Do they expect the world to believe that all of these children are lying? UN spokesman Stéphane Dujarric said that the agency defers to local governments in situations like this. So obviously we'll keep an eye on this. But as we've said, it is the responsibility of member states to fully investigate and hopefully prosecute crimes. The fight against impunity for these horrendous actions has to be a partnership between the UN and member states, Dujarric said. There is a second investigation that is currently ongoing which involves UN peacekeepers and sexual assault in the Central African Republic. However, it is not clear whether or not this investigation is relating to the same accusations, or new crimes that have taken place since. This is not the first time that UN workers have been accused of these types of crimes. After the UN has entered areas like Cambodia, Mozambique, Bosnia, Sudan and Kosovo, there was an explosion of sex trafficking and numerous reports of abuse. In the past several years, the UN was caught attempting to cover up the fact that there were 231 people in Haiti who claimed they were sexually violated by UN peacekeepers, and were forced to perform sexual acts in exchange for food and supplies that were intended as relief packages. There are almost too many cases to list in which high-profile public figures or organizations were accused in pedophilia or human trafficking cases. However, they almost always dodge any prosecution or public scrutiny due to their control of the legal system and media. There have been many cases in recent history where establishment figures have been caught up in child prostitution rings, but quickly had the story swept under the rug. One such case was on June 29, 1989, when the Washington Times' Paul M. Rodriguez and George Archibald reported on a Washington, D.C. prostitution ring that had intimate connections with the White House and President George H.W. Bush. It was suspected that this was connected with the Franklin prostitution ring that was being exposed at the same time, in a different part of the country. That story involved the manager of the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union in Nebraska. His name was Lawrence Larry King and he was also a prominent politician. Various unconnected victims accused him of transporting them around the country to be used as sex slaves for politicians. When the accusations finally came to light, the victims were railroaded out of court and threatened into recanting their statements, thus making themselves guilty of perjury in the process. The perjury was unfortunately enough to drop the case and actually sent some of the victims to jail. The truth of the matter didn't come out until former Nebraska State Senator John DeCamp went back to re-examine the case and discovered that the accusations were indeed true. Human trafficking is an industry of the ruling class. It always has been. Your average blue-collar, white-collar people aren't buying slaves, and they certainly aren't selling them either. This is still very much a part of Western culture. Even companies with major government contracts have been accused of organizing full-scale slave rings. These companies have not only been protected by their governments, but they were also able to keep the contracts and subsidies that they had prior to the accusations. Image http://pixel.watch/QUT7 Some of the world's largest multinational corporations such as DynCorp and Halliburton were exposed as major players in the global human trafficking market. These companies did not work alone, but cooperated with each other through various subsidiaries and had the luxury of government protection. When suspicion was brought upon these companies, it was swept under the rug by government officials. Even high-ranking members of the establishment such as Donald Rumsfeld were implicit in covering up this scandal. On March 11, 2005, he was questioned by Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney and he admitted on the record that the allegations did have credibility, but he pushed the blame off onto a few rogue employees. He used the few bad apples line that the government always dishes out when they are caught up in a scandal. Although Rumsfeld and other high-ranking officials claimed that they would look into the situation, they actually prevented any serious investigations from taking place. This happens every day. Even organizations like the UN and NATO have come under fire for running slave rings out of third world countries when they are on peacekeeping missions. Read more at http://UN-peacekeepers-child-sex-abuse/number 5 VOJPMJURDHFPQ0D.99